you. Yeah, I might just add a few more comments. Certainly when I was working in Bangladesh, there was an incident out there as well on Boxing Day, and pretty much all of the coastline in Sri Lanka, which had been developed for hotels, was affected, and that which was protected by mangrove was pretty much protected. I was just going to mention one thing about where food and fuel fit together. Biofuels at the moment don't seem to be used as a mechanism to replace fossil fuels, but more to supplement it. As supply meets demand, we're getting peak everything. We've got peak oil, we've got peak food, as we've talked about. There's peak resource use, peak minerals, like on the moment it's coltan that goes in your mobile phones that's caused wars in the Congo. So we're treating food and fuel as a clash as we try and top up everything, as we're peaking everything. And I think it's really dangerous to take out population as any kind of separate issue. I think it's better to focus, as Richard Heinberg has done in his book Peak Everything, in seeing how everything is related. And simply as everything is going up, population is tending to go up at the same time. That suits consumerism, because it's the everything else apart from population that the companies want to sell, so those companies can also get bigger, preferably faster than anyone else. Just picking up on some of the points I'll say in terms of population in the UK, focus perhaps instead of think about housing, households. How much more housing do we need in the UK? Do we need to build the 11,000 more homes because that's how many are homeless? Or do we need to build about 80,000 new homes total forever in the UK because that's how many people are staying in bed and breakfast out of a home? Or is it 650,000 because that's the level that Shelter say is the level of overcrowding in the UK? Or do you say it's about the affordable housing target of 3.7 or 3.5 million, which Shelter have come out for in the longer term? No, we're targeting 6 million, because that's what the developers tell us the price of houses says how much we should build. It's all about speculative investments, it's about price of housing, it's about cash rich, which brings us into the situation of money. What drives this? PFIs and tax havens. That's why people have been protesting outside St Paul's. The 12% you said in terms of if we increase since 1990, the carbon emissions per person increased by 12% in the UK since 1990. But if you look at the value the UK economy drives from the fact that business is located in the UK and then plunders the rest of the world, we are making even, perhaps it should be saying is even more. Things like the clash between food and fuel is being exemplified in the food commodity trading, which is making loads of money for people in the City of London. It's making loads of money for the 1% or the 0.01% of our population, and they are the people who are driving the market that's buying up Africa. And I think that's one way. Where do we go the other way? Well, I agree we should maybe come back to the climate jobs and maybe start by redefining age not as a problem, but as actually something of value. Traditional cultures thought of older people as thinking of them as their wisdom was something to look forward to, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs encouraged us to move away from the story of stuff, where we forever need more time to earn more, to buy more, to earn more, to buy more. But instead we should actualise ourselves in terms of the values which we hold, and that is a dematerialised concept. You don't need energy, you don't produce waste, you don't need to turn on the TV. You just need to think about things. And that means then we have an economy which is built around justice. People used to call it socialism. I think we need to think about it in terms of eco-socialism. We need to localise socialism so it isn't a top-down bureaucracy, but it's something which brings policy back to people. So a justice economy. Economy comes from the word which is care of the household. And the two things which we've stopped caring about is maintenance of the house, the environment, where the house is placed, and caring for the people within the house. Because the caring jobs are valued the least, and the money jobs are valued the most. And we need to turn our economy and actually make this big society concept that David Cameron talks about real. Because there's no point government having big policies for big solutions that big business friends can deliver, and then ideas with no policies attached whatsoever for what can really needs to be done in the community. We need to recreate the jobs, like you said, the climate jobs, which the non-extractive jobs which are destroying the planet. And I think that that's not just the ones directly related to climate change. It's got to be in caring for our older people, opening new youth centres. I think those are climate jobs. Locally we have Reigate area conservation volunteers. Those should be jobs, not volunteers. Why not think of all the things we volunteer for and say they should be paid? And all the things where people justify high salaries for accounting for how much everyone else has or hasn't done. Maybe that should be the luxury which we add on to our system at the end. So what does that look like? Well, maybe then we need to have an economy where we turn it upside down, and rather than incentivise aviation by £9 billion in the UK and send people as tourists over to Sri Lanka, to those hotels which have allowed the mangrove swamps to be cut down and those disasters to happen over there, and invest in local cycling schemes. We should invest not in burning timber to generate renewable energy, but reusing the timber in the first place and stop the travesty of a loss of 250,000 tonnes of construction timber, which used to be reused each year, is now burnt and thrown away. In America, if a charity gives something for reuse, it can be offset against corporation tax. So it's like gift aid for the big businesses. If we really want big society, we should make it apply to the big businesses in the UK. And we should have those who care valued more than those who make money. So what does that look like in the end? Well, I just come back to Brian's point about a political class. I think we do have a political class in the UK. I think we have a class in the UK that makes policies, and then they talk to their friends who act on them, and they're called big business. Whether that big business is involved in the arms trade and acts on those policies by invading another country, or whether it's by developing and building an incinerator, rather than creating those climate jobs, creating those reuse charities and those effective high-value recycling organisations locally. No, I think we need to break up that political class and challenge this notion that actually maybe all of us, Barry, myself, the speakers, the audience, we're all speaking, we're all part of this. There isn't speakers and audience, and likewise in life there shouldn't be politicians and others. And I worry incredibly about the others. You talked about why isn't everyone here? Well, that's because the others are called consumers. We're caused to read newspapers titled things like The Observer rather than The Participant. And then ourselves, we stand by the sidelines trying to lobby someone else to do something to solve the world's problems. Whereas I think we do need to stand up and say we can act, we are all politicians now. And rather than the link between policy and practice is being something which the richest people and the most interconnected, powerful people, rather than that interconnected, beautiful rural village, which I remember in Bangladesh, we need to recreate those interconnections locally by valuing and creating those climate jobs which exemplify and drive those interconnections, whether it's through a community centre with the community worker linking people together, or a reuse centre having reuse as the means of drawing local people together, or whether it's about cycling and walking schemes which allow us not to think about security as our primary concern, whether it's about policing locally or for some over-ambitious aspects of what damage a march might cause, or into some foreign country. We should put, quality of life before survival. We're not going to survive climate change because we've managed it in a secure way. We're going to either survive or fail in the process, reconnect to the possibility that we actually love each other and we actually love the planet on which we live too. Thanks.
It was interesting to hear Maslow mentioned, because of course one of the lowest things in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is food and water and shelter. Isn't it dreadful in this day and age how many people have neither? Yeah. Before we finish the meeting, and we have to, the meeting will be ending at 9 o'clock, 2 minutes to both our speakers to say a few summing up words. 2 minutes, 2 minutes. I'm very strict, I'm a hard chair.
Well, look, let me just focus on one question that wasn't answered. And that is, why is this off the radar? And why, I think you posed the question of, why aren't there more people here tonight? My view is that we're not actually connecting with where people are very often. I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to, sometimes quite self-indulgently, paint a vision that people can't connect with at all. That they don't see a way to relate their lives to the sort of future that they believe that those of us who are part of the environmental movement want to implement and want to see. And I think it's great to be visionary, and it's great to be dedicated. But sometimes I think we allow that to turn into a sort of, unless you understand that this is hair, shirt, pain, and guilt, then you're not welcome here. And I think for far too long the environmental movement has seen a huge opposition between development and the environment. And I think we've seen some of that in what we discussed tonight. And until we understand that this is really about sustainable development, it is about allowing people to have the economic growth that they desire, that they aspire to, that we have enjoyed for so long. And until we see that there will be no environmental progress without that economic development progress, and equally there will be no economic development progress unless there is that environmental progress, then we'll continue to speak to half-empty rooms.
Thank you very much. That was very... Jonathan, the floor is yours.
I agree. I think it's a real challenge to live in one world and imagine another. And I've had the privilege of going to Bangladesh and then coming back almost like Jim Carrey in that film where he's in a bubble. I can't remember what it's called. Truman Show or something. And suddenly everything I thought was normal seems strange. And it's only through and then living in this world, trying to stand for something, but yet actually having to get on 9 to 5, earn enough money to live in this world too. It's almost like a dance. You've got to somehow walk that line. If you go too far one way, you fall off the edge, and no one sees you, as Barry said. But if you go away from the edge too far, then you're no longer standing, that actually you can see past what we've got now, that there is something beyond that, and it's worth having. And I think that's our challenge, is to walk that fine line and say on aviation, do I as an activist fly or not? If I do, I'm on one side. If I don't, and forever tell everyone that I don't, then I fall on off the edge and everyone who's flying will never talk to me. I'm not like them anymore. So what do? Well, I tend to think that the best thing to do as an environmentalist, and that's why I've got involved in the politics side of it rather than the campaigning side, just. I think we can quite often focus on campaigning against something, and it's like you're shoving a spear at someone. But at the end of every spear, there's like the hand which holds, hands that holds it. And at the end of everything we're campaigning against, there's something which we can be standing for. And if we stand for all of those things together, then at the moment it seems to be, well, if you're campaigning and your number one concern is asthma, because your mum died of asthma, or it's flying because you've been to Bangladesh, or it's issues in your council estate, because unless you've dealt with that, then nothing else seems worth dealing with. Unless we can draw a picture where you can deal with all of those things together, then you're only going to get together a small group of people who say, that's my issue, that's the thing I identify with. So my hope is simply that we can all get on with our own lives and do that with a degree of integrity, but also that we might stand together and gloriously hold hands. And if my issue is flying, and yours is dealing with food security and water, and yours might be about population, and yours might be about something different, we can say together we can stand for all of these things. But as long as we're only on our own, then we can only really stand for the thing which we've declared is what we're going to focus on. So I think we all need each other's help.
Okay, now I've only got one thing to do before we close the meeting, and think rather than do it myself, I will do it to our able gentleman, Ken, if you can make the announcements.
I can do it off the top of my head.
Do it from the top of your head. I know you're the
There are 3 events going on Saturday we'll give announcements for. There's a campaign against climate change conference. I don't actually have the exact dates, but it's at SOAS, is it 12 till 5?
On Saturday.
On Saturday.
Don't have the time.
No, you got it inside there, Karen, isn't it? I think it's 12 to 5 at SOAS, and if people want to know more about it, there are leaflets on the table with a really impressive list of speakers.
Yes, 12
Now,
till 5.
tragically and annoyingly, at exactly the same time, the Green Party...
Which, yeah, it's actually, to be sectarian about it, it's actually Green Left and Socialist Resistance are putting on a meeting in ULU, University of London Union, starting at 10 o'clock. It's a day school, and it features a Filipino or Filipina campaigner on the issues of environment and food by the name of Maria Neri. I believe she's also going to attend the other event. So it doesn't really matter which one you go to. You get her and Derek Wall, and they're sort of running around London between these 2 events. And also, of course, Martin, what's happening in Brent on Saturday as well. It's a busy day.
Okay, you can reduce your carbon footprint by just going to Harlesden Methodist Church on Saturday and taking part in the Brent People's Assembly. It's a way of bringing together community groups, residents associations, trade unions, ordinary people to discuss the impact of the cuts on the community in Brent, and particularly their impact on children and young people. And we're trying to get out of that a way of bringing people together to learn from each other's campaigns and decide how they're going to move things forward. And while I'm on my feet, for transparency's sake, the collection raised £53.70. Thank you for everyone for contributing. And Barry, sorry, one thing. On your website, you're advertising a meeting about climate change on November the 24th at the bowling club.
Yeah, that's on the list of announcements.
It's on the list. Announced his own meeting.
No. Very happy for you. You just got it.
Yes, it's at the Century Bowling Club, 51 to 53 Logan Road. So I'll be back from Mexico by then. No, I won't. I won't be back until the 29th.
I hope you go to Mexico by train, not by aeroplane.
I think she's swimming.
I think